All right. So I am Jen Goddard from Thriving Proof. I have a holistic health practice in Brewer, Maine. And I've recently made friends with Kristen. I'm so excited to meet Kristen because she has so many amazing talents that I don't have. And I am so excited to share it with all of you guys. So, Kristen, tell me a little bit more about who you are and how you got started into canning.
Yeah, my name is Christen Gordon. I'm founder of Downtown Homesteader, which is basically a hands-on skills workshop location in downtown Bangor, where we teach people to be more confident, self-sufficient, and capable. We bring people together in a live format so they get hands-on experience and they get to spend time with other community members who are also interested in the same topic. And a lot of times we have family and friends that join each other for a workshop, and it's really great to strengthen those bonds as well. So that's essentially our goal, is to bring people together and make them more skillful and capable individuals. And we have a lot of fun in the process.
I
Yeah.
can't
So,
wait to do a workshop with you myself. So, how did you get started into canning?
well, I used to watch my mom and Graham can. I would stand on the kitchen chair and watch them handle all of the produce from the garden that they grew. And I didn't really learn then. I mean, I watched them, so I knew that process existed. But I learned when I moved to Oregon in, 2010, I think. I was there for a short stint doing a travel job, and blackberries grew everywhere, and they were huge and they were sweet as candy. And I just needed to find a way to preserve those and bring them back home. Freezing wouldn't do it because I had to travel back across the country and it needed to survive a week in the car. So I made jam. I taught myself, basically going online on YouTube and various online resources. Learned how to make jam. It's not the easiest thing to learn how to can first, but it is the gateway drug to canning for a lot of people, and it was for me. So that's where I got started. And from there, I became kind of enamored with the idea of being able to take a perishable item that would go bad in a few days and put it on a shelf for a year and still be able to open it and taste sunshine in January. So I learned how to can all kinds of stuff from there.
Nice. I
Yeah.
remember growing up, my aunt had peach trees in her yard. So she would make peach preserves. And when my dad would get so excited when a jar of that came in the house, it was like liquid gold. And
Yeah.
no one was allowed to touch it except for my dad. And if you were really, really lucky, you might get a little tiny, teeny bit of it. It was so precious. And
It's special. Yeah. It's a lot of work I mean, peaches especially, you've got to skin them and pit them and cut them. And like there's a lot to it. So it is valuable, precious commodity.
yeah. So what else? Give us an idea of what other things we could can.
So many things. People ask what I've canned, and I joke that I've canned everything but my husband and my cats. That's
That's
only
great.
because they won't sit still long enough. But I've canned all kinds of things. The easy stuff, that doesn't really require a lot of equipment are like pickles and jams, foods that have a high acid content, because you don't need a lot of special equipment for that. So I started out with those. But then once I started pressure canning, it opened a whole new world of things like chicken broth and canned meat products and ready food, meals in jars. I can actually show you a few things if you'd like.
Yes, please.
All
Yes.
right, I'm going to take you around here and flip the camera if I can find that button and not poke you all in the face. There we go.
Nice.
Okay. So some of my favorite things to have on hand are pantry staples, but also ready-made meal items. And here are a few.
Oh, chili.
Yeah,
Peaches.
so chili is great, awesome for making like tacos, burritos, just a bowl of chili. That's wonderful. Baked beans. I can use my mom's recipe, which is delicious. Beef stew, super easy because you just chunk everything up raw in the jar and it cooks as it cans. So that's really nice to pull out on a cold winter's day.
I like
And you
that.
can
I
really,
like that. It cooks as it cans. That's nice.
yes. Yeah, you can take advantage of good sales when you get good beef sales, and seasonally, like sometimes around Christmas, you'll get beef sales, and the carrots and potatoes and onions will all go on sale too for Christmas dinner. So you can preserve those savings in a jar. These guys are convenience items that I just realized I could do a year or two ago. I didn't have time to make jam. Jam is not actually my favorite thing to make, but I could can the fruit. And that way it was shelf stable until I did turn it into jam. So I can basically just dump this, add the sugar and pectin, and make my jam from here without having to do all of the prep work at the time that I do the jam canning.
Oh, that's nice.
And so there's your beloved peaches, Jen.
Yay!
Cranberry juice is kind of fun. When those go on sale around Thanksgiving, you can just drop like a half a cup of cranberries in a jar, fill it up with water. So you can add sweetener or sugar or not. You can that, and it takes about 6 weeks for that flavor to permeate into the water, but then you basically have homemade cranberry juice. You just strain the fruit out. You can then use the fruit to make muffins or something if you don't want to toss it out. But most of the flavor now has saturated into the liquid, and got homemade cranberry juice.
Wow.
We made pepper jelly. This is my husband's favorite thing to make. And we like to put that over. It's a little bit spicy, a little bit sweet, a little bit tangy because it has vinegar in it. We'll serve that over a ham or warm it up and pour it over cream cheese for like a spread on crackers. It's really delicious around the holiday times.
Nice.
Let's see.
I love pepper jelly with goat cheese.
Oh, yeah, that sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Rhubarb relish. So this falls into the category of things you can't buy in the store. That's one of the reasons I can, is because I like to have stuff on my shelf that I can't get anywhere else. Rhubarb relish falls in that category. This is delicious on like pork loin or something like that. Salsa verde, sweet pickle relish. You don't need to make this very often unless you eat it a lot. I've got way too much sweet relish in my pantry right now. Same thing with dill pickles. These are so easy to can that I've canned a lot of them, and we just don't go through them super fast. But you can do fun things when you do it yourself. I don't know if you can see the dill flower in there.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
There's a big dill flower, and it just looks so pretty in the jar. Dilly beans, probably my favorite thing to eat out of a jar. I love my dilly beans.
So now you just pull it out of the jar. You can eat it just like that. You don't have to cook it, right?
Correct. Yeah. Actually, all of this stuff can be pulled right out of the jar and eaten. You don't need to cook any of it. It's all cooked already through the canning process.
Nice.
So, yeah, it makes for very convenient things.
Nice.
This is another thing that you can't buy. Pickled fiddleheads.
Oh, yeah, I never had
New
those.
England treat.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think this is in a sweet pickle brine with a little bit of spice to it also. Applesauce is a big pantry staple. Now we're kind of getting into the pantry staple section here that I always love to have on hand. I've got young nieces and other kids in my life, so always having applesauce is great. And it's so easy to make the applesauce. Homemade salsa. I have not bought salsa in, I don't know, half a decade probably. Chickpeas, canned beans in general is a very cost-effective thing to can. You'll pay, I don't know, $75 to $1.50 for a can of organic beans, and you can can your own for, gosh, a fraction of that, because you'll pay the same amount for a pound of beans, and then you can can several jars out of that 1 pound of beans.
Wow.
Chicken is one of our favorite things to have on the shelf. And if you want to ask questions and I'm talking too fast, you just slow me down.
No, I'm interested about this one though.
This is not like, you're not going to want to open this and put it on a plate with some mashed potatoes. The texture of it is a little bit more dry because it is thoroughly cooked, but it's wonderful as a chicken salad.
Okay.
Or that's primarily what we use it for, is I make a chicken pasta salad, and it makes it just an instant meal practically once you cook the pasta. This is also good if you want to make like a chicken gravy to put over, I don't know, a biscuit or rice or something like that.
Now with the chicken, you're putting it in raw. You're starting out raw, right?
I do. Sometimes I do. This I actually blanched before I put it in the jar because it looks a lot prettier.
Okay.
You can just kind of see the chunks of chicken. When you can chicken raw, which is totally safe and fine to do, it has a name in the community called ugly chicken because it does not look pretty in the jar. It looks kind of gnarly. Ground beef is another one that's awesome to have on hand. It makes for instant taco night. I just pop this open, mix in some taco seasoning. You actually can even can it in the taco seasoning.
Wow.
And just kind of warm that up and toss it in your tacos or on your nachos. Corned beef, take advantage of those post St. Patrick's Day sales. This comes out just like if you made boiled dinner. And great for like hash or something like that.
Nice.
Chicken stock. I have paid for my canners many times over by canning my own stocks. I have vegetable, ham, beef, chicken, all the different kinds. I have not bought stock in probably 10 years.
Wow.
And we save, we probably go through a quart a week or 2 quarts a week, and literally saved hundreds of dollars by canning my own stock out of kitchen scraps.
Right.
You got a chicken carcass after roasting it, or a bunch of bones from your chicken thighs. You toss that in some water and boom, there's liquid gold right there.
Nice.
Corn relish. This is delicious. One of our favorite things. This is great on tacos or added to a salad, and can really take advantage of those summer sales when the farmers are selling bulk corn. They don't usually advertise it, but if you ask a local farmer if you can buy bulk corn, they'll usually give you a discounted price. And that's nice to have you around. This one is elderflower cordial. That's another, you can't buy that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never seen that.
Yeah, I harvest those flowers and basically steep them in a lemon simple syrup. And then this you dilute in water, and it makes the most refreshing, summery beverage. It's delicious. And then the last one I'll show you is just kind of a novelty item and shows some of the fun things you can do with canning. This is bean salad, but what I like about it is that I canned it in individual servings. So this is like a lunchbox, half cup little jar. So I can just toss that in a lunchbox. It's shelf stable and it's fine till we pop it open.
Nice.
So those are some of the fun things you can do with canning.
Yes, this is so exciting. Oh, I can't wait. So you mentioned the cost savings. I mean, that's a big deal because as food is becoming more and more and more and more expensive, and we find people that, we're cutting corners, and a lot of times we're cutting the corners that aren't benefiting our health, right? So we're going to foods that are less nutritious in the attempt to save money. And this is a way we can do it so that we're not cutting corners on nutrition, but can still save money in the process. So
yeah,
love this.
Quality is one of the biggest reasons to can, in addition to the price savings, is whatever you want for the quality, whether it's price savings or organic or locally grown or out of your garden. Being able to put in your pantry the things that really align with your food values and not break the bank is really powerful. Yeah.
And this year will be the first year that I can, since I've come to Maine, that I'll be able to have a garden. So I'm really excited. I already started with some seeds in the house and that kind of thing. But then I always panic. I'm like, well, what if I get too much? And now I know what to do. And if I get too much,
right. You just call me and come over. And we'll use my canning kitchen. We'll put it all up.
Yeah,
I think it's really powerful to grow your own food and to be able to preserve your own food and have that food security. This is my personal feelings on it. It's one of the greatest freedoms that we have. If you think about what it costs to buy food, you need to earn the money that you pay taxes on. You need to have a transportation method that you're filling with gas that you're paying taxes on, that you're going to the store to purchase that you're paying taxes on. And then you still have to bring it home and do all the processing. When you can create something yourself, it saves on so many different levels. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it's so empowering. That's awesome. And you know, the way we're feeling more and more instability, right, in the world these days. So any piece that we can, you know, have a little bit more, I don't want to say control over, but you know, more involvement in how
Yeah.
that happens and how it presents itself in our life, the more power we have over the outcomes. So so this is awesome. And the convenience too. I mean, like you were saying, you know, lunchbox version of it too.
Yeah. Yeah, you can take it to any level that you like. Having instant meals, sides, comments, condiments, and simmering sauces, and all kinds of different components to have it shelf ready is really wonderful.
Well, and I'm always talking to people about meal prepping, right? That's huge.
Hmm.
You know, when you're trying to live a healthier life, you know, you being prepared is huge. So this is like being prepared on steroids. This is like the bomb.
It doesn't replace fresh produce, but it's a nice adjunct to that healthy lifestyle where you have a lot of input over what you input.
Yeah, and you know, the more you can, the lighter the load when it comes to meal prep. You know, any part of that you can
Yes.
make simpler, it just takes a huge load off. So even if it were like, you know, okay, this has to be done fresh, but yet all of this I can and have prepared, even if it's just like in an emergency. Like I had a hard week, you know, it was harder than usual, and I kind of got stuck and didn't plan as well or whatever. You know, well, I've got some backup. So
Yeah.
it just gives you a sense of security. It's like, okay, I can breathe. We got this. We will eat
Yeah,
another.
if you've got a bowl of lettuce and a jar of salsa and a jar of ground beef, you got taco salads on a tight Tuesday, and that's just awesome.
That's right. Yeah, especially like busy moms and all that kind of stuff. I always tell people when you cook something, you know, cook 2 or 3 batches of it at a time, you know, dirty the dishes
Yes.
once or whatever. But then, you know, having to freeze it all and it takes up a lot of space and that kind of thing, you know, but canning, just find a shelf, you know?
Under the bed, behind the couch. I have stored canning jars in many, many places when I lived in a place that didn't have the space that I'm in now. They were everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
You
probably have people
gotta
get
stay on
inventory
top of the
lists.
rotation, but
Yeah, well, that's a good question. On average, how long do these things last in the jars?
um for best, the short answer is they never really go bad unless the seal breaks. That food is not going to spoil. It is sterilized in the jar. That's what canning is sterilizing food in the jar. So as long as that seal is intact, that food is fine to eat. Now, quality and nutrition and color are going to degrade over time. Because time takes its toll on everything, even if it's sterilized. So for best quality, I would say to eat it within 12 to 18 months. But I certainly have stuff that's on my shelf, particularly pressure canned items and some like things that are higher sugar and high acid, like jellies. Those can really last quite a while without too much quality if you keep them out of sun, keep a cool, dark place. They certainly are fine for beyond that. For the best quality and nutrition, I would say 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. And when you compare, I mean, even if it does lose some of the nutritional value, when you compare it to fast food,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which probably has
Probably better than a Big Mac.
exactly. I'm sure it's got more nutrients than Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we might have a leg up on that one, no matter how old it is.
Exactly.
So what kind of equipment do I need if I want to do this?
All right, I'm going to take you on another field trip.
Nice.
And we will check that out. I had laid everything out on a table, and then I thought, why do that when I can just show you the process at the same time and let you see the equipment there. So I'll tilt you down here to the canning station, and everything that you see here on the white tray, that's everything that you really need to can.
Okay.
You can get away with just those items. The pot of product, the jars, something to scoop into the jars. You need a rag and some kind of tongs to pull it out of the water. Now, I have used tongs like these, like everybody has.
Mm-hmm.
I will say it can be done, but super sketchy.
Okay.
Because the jars are slippery and they don't always get a good purchase with these type of tongs. So there are some very nice to have items. Some would say jar tongs are necessary. I have made it work with the other tongs, so I won't say they're necessary, but that's my top nice to have is jar tongs.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact about these, when I first got them, my instinct was to grab them by this soft rubbery part.
Mm-hmm.
And I had such a hard time getting them around the jar and then hanging on to them. And that's because you're supposed to use them like this, where you hold the black part of the handle, and then this curved part hugs the neck of the jar.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's a nice to have. A canning funnel is a nice to have because that sets into the jar and guides the food so you don't have such a mess if you're a sloppy spooner like me.
Mm-hmm.
This used to be a pretty important item. Once upon a time, they recommended that you boil these lids
Mm-hmm.
in water or keep them simmering and hot because the compound underneath wanted to be warm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most canning jars, the instructions are that you do not need to simmer these. But when you did, it was really nice to have a magnetic lid lifter. So if you're canning that way, you would want a lid lifter. But
Gotcha.
I don't do that. So essentially, what you do for canning is you've got your product here. I have some peaches. So we're just going to scoop the peaches into the jar. The actual processing part of canning is totally the easiest part. As I said earlier, it's the skinning, the pitting, the chopping, and the cleanup that's the worst. You fill the jar.
Okay.
Basically, with a high acid food, you can go pretty close to the rim. This is a pretty good rule of thumb here. This line on the jar, each canning recipe is going to tell you how much headspace to leave. The headspace is the distance between the top of the jar and the top of the contents.
Okay.
So they'll tell you if that needs to be a quarter inch, a half inch, 1 inch, whatever. Usually pressure canning, you need more headspace because they get to a pretty violent temperature in that canner.
Okay.
The lids in the US, most of the time people are using a 2-piece lid.
Mm-hmm.
They do sell 1-piece lids, but they're costly. So those aren't commonly used in home canning. So the 2-piece lid this is called the lid or the flat.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a rubber compound on the underside. That's what warms up while you can and creates the seal on the jar.
Okay.
The lid has a little dimple in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can see that, how it flexes.
Yeah.
When you've canned an item and it has a vacuum seal, that little thing pops down and gets suctioned down. That's how you know your jar is sealed.
Okay.
If that flexes, then your jar does not have a good seal.
Okay.
So that's the flat, and then it goes with a ring. So those two go together. You put that on top, and you tighten it to finger tight. And what finger tight means is basically as tight as you can make that with one finger.
Okay.
There's still a good quarter turn in that lid.
Mm-hmm.
But if you tighten it that much, the air is not going to be able to escape.
Okay.
And you want that air to escape to make a vacuum. So this provides a happy medium between a seal and still allowing the air to come out as the product is canning.
Okay.
So no water will get in, but the air can still come out.
Gotcha.
And let's see. For water bath canning, which you can do with all of your pickles, fruits, salsas, high acid foods, all you really need is a pot of boiling water. Now, this happens to be a canning pot, but you can do this with any pot you need it to be a couple of inches or 3 inches deeper or so than your jar.
Okay.
You want the jar to be covered by about 2 inches of water. So you'd really, as you can see, do not need a lot of equipment.
No.
You need the jar, something to hold the jar, something to scoop the food in the jar, and a pot of boiling water. That's it.
Nice.
And then you drop it in the canner, and I'll let that go. And while we finish our conversation,
Oh no, where did she go? Okay. There we go. Now we're back.
Okay. Slight interruption. All right. So that was really it as far as the water bath canning equipment goes. Pretty straightforward. And then I'll give you a few examples here of some other types of equipment. So this is just a big pot. So as I said, you can use any kind of pot for water bath canning, as long as it's a deep vessel. This, I don't know, it's like a 20-liter Walmart $12.88 steel pot, nothing exciting. You do need something in the bottom, which I forgot to show you over there, but some kind of trivet that holds the jar up off the bottom of the canner for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want the jar to rattle around on the bottom. And also there's a slight concave shape to the bottom of a jar. And when you can in a flat bottomed pot, there will be a tendency for that jar to want to suction to the bottom. Oh, yeah. And both of those things can cause breakage of the jar. And it is heartbreaking to have jars break when you've put so much work into getting to that canning part. Sure. So something needs to go on the bottom. This is a pizza screen. I've used that before. This is the trivet that goes inside of my Instant Pot. The canners will come with these things, basically anything that just lifts it up a little bit and allows water to circulate through. And now this is a pressure canner. This is a Presto. This is the most cost-effective pressure canner that I know of. There are very beautiful Cadillac style canners called the All American. Those are about $400, which is well more than I wish to pay for a pressure canner at this phase of my life. Awesome. I got to can a lot of jars to pay off a $400 canner. Right. But that said, it is heirloom quality. One of the benefits is it does not have rubber gasket that can wear out. It's just metal on metal. So a lot of people will tout that as a benefit. However, I'll say that this gasket I've never replaced it. This is probably 10 years old. I oil it twice a year to keep it supple and flexible. And it's very easy to pop in and out. I purchased a separate gasket in case I ever need to replace it. I'm not kind of in a jam without it, but I've not had an issue with that lasting for a very long time. So this pressure canner allows me to can things that are lower in acid that don't have that additional preservation quality of a high acid food or something in vinegar. It brings the food up to a bit of a higher temperature. So whereas a boiling pot of water is limited to 212 degrees, the pressure canner, because this seals down and can build pressure up inside, it allows the temperature inside this vessel to increase to around 240 to 250 degrees, which kills pathogens that are in some of that lower acid food. Or not necessarily in there, but potentially. So it kills all the things. It makes it totally sterile.
Nice. Now, Christen, what's the difference between that and like your standard pressure cooker? Could you do the same thing?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. You cannot do this in a standard pressure cooker. You can use a pressure canner as a pressure cooker. You cannot use a pressure cooker as a canner. The reason being, the canner is specifically has a gauge and or a weight that puts a prescribed amount of pressure on the product inside. A pressure cooker does not have that. So you can't regulate it and ensure that you're at a certain pressure for a certain amount of time, which is very important in terms of eliminating potential pathogens.
Okay, good.
Yep. So I'm glad you asked. I have used this as a pressure cooker and it will handle a whole turkey.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. I was able to can a turkey by cooking it in this first and then putting the meat into jars.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. This is the weight that goes on. Well, basically, this is a steam valve. And this weight makes sure that it's a 10-pound weight. It doesn't weigh 10 pounds, but it holds 10 pounds of pressure inside the pot. When it comes up to the right pressure, it'll rock gently like that. And I like using this adjustable weight instead of just the gauge because I can listen to my canner with my ears. And as long as it sounds like that, everything's good. If it starts sounding like this, I know that I need to go turn that heat down because it's getting a little too hot. You just don't want it to rattle the jars and have too much pressure in there. So I would turn the heat down if it went fast. And if I stopped hearing it rock and it were silent, I would know I need to go check my heat and see if I need to turn it up a little bit to keep that pressure at the 10 pounds for the whole canning time.
Nice.
So I think that's it on the pressure canner, unless you have any other questions about it.
No, and I'm guessing that there's probably a list of foods somewhere, if you're not sure, like, is this low acid? Is it high acid? That kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you just, let's see, I'll switch it so you can see my charming face.
Yeah.
Yes, you can absolutely find those lists online. I recommend using the Ball canning guides. They're just a lot of great tried and true proven recipes, and they're going to tell you in there what the process needs to be. Just think of it as if it tastes tangy, it's probably a higher acid food. If there's tartness to it, sometimes some like fruits need a little bit more acid added to them than just the fruit. But if it's tart, it's probably a high acid that you can do in water bath. If it's not something that's tart, then you probably need to pressure can it.
Okay. So let's say I'm making dinner and, it's chicken and all this stuff, and I've got all these leftovers. Yeah. Would that be something that I could then can, or if it's already cooked like that, it's going to continue to cook and not be any good?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is it depends. It kind of depends on what it is. Something like carrots, what if they're already cooked and then they're going to be cooked more, they may end up pretty soft. Basically anything that's pressure canned is going to come out about the texture that it would if it were commercially canned. So think of the texture of a carrot in a Progresso soup or something like that. They're pretty soft. So some things are going to lose their integrity to some degree. Things like meat and beans, they're so thoroughly cooked in the canning process. It doesn't really matter if they're raw or canned when they go in. They're going to come out about the same texture, which is about the same texture they would be for a commercially canned product too. So I make chili and then I will can the leftovers. I'll make pasta sauce and then can the leftovers. Particularly sauces and things, those do just fine being canned after being cooked.
Even if it has dairy in it, you don't have to worry about it.
You do have to worry about dairy. That kind of gets into a rebel canning topic. I don't know if we're going there in this conversation.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
The USDA guidelines do not recommend canning dairy products. It's commercially, it's different because they can kind of flash can things. Their equipment gets very, very hot, very fast. Mostly, I think it's that it hasn't been tested for home canning. And a lot of things that are not recommended to be home canned, that is the issue, is they just haven't been tested. It's not that it's bad or that it can't work. It just hasn't been tested. So there's no USDA or alphabet agency guideline for whether that's safe or not. You can find guidelines for rebel canning online in various groups, but I recommend as a beginning canner, you should really stick to what the recommendations are until you know what you're doing and you're very well educated about whatever potential risks you're taking. So generally, like a dairy-based soup, we would can a base and then you can add the cream to it. So you can can everything for a corn chowder, except for the cream or the milk or whatever you put in there. And then you can pour it out of the jar and add the dairy then.
That makes sense. Okay. So just do it everything but, and then combine. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. This is so exciting. I just want to can some stuff. All right, cool.
All right. Let me just flip you. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to show you the electric canners. So there are three canners on the market that self-purport to be safe for electric canning. They've done their own independent testing. The USDA has not tested and approved any specific canners to this point, but these companies have tested them and found that they are able to maintain pressure at 15 PSI. And so they market them as safe for home pressure canning. One of them is this. This is the Carry canner. There's one that looks very similar called the Nesco. They just put a different label on it because the company sold. So this is the one that I like. It's the most cost effective of the electric canners, and it has a pretty good capacity. You can fit 4-quart jars in here or 5 pint jars, or I think 10 half-pint jars because you can layer them in here. So it's got fairly decent capacity for an electric canner. The Instant Pot Max can only handle pints, and the Presto, I forgot the model name of the Presto electric canner, but it can hold 4 quarts, but it's twice the price of the Carry. So it can hold 5 quarts. So it holds 1 jar more, but it's twice the price. So I went with the Carry canner. That's about $150 right now in today's market. And that can be used for a water bath or pressure canning in the Carry. I have used it with great success. It's very convenient because I don't have to boil this big thing of water and I don't have to listen to the rattling weight. So if I'm canning smaller quantities of something like leftovers, I'll pull the Carry out. I rarely pull out the big canner unless I'm doing like 30 jars of salsa or some huge batch processing thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is just a regular Instant Pot. You cannot pressure can in a regular Instant Pot. There is no weight regulation on it, as I mentioned earlier, but you can use this as a water bath canner by using the saute function and boiling water in it. You essentially turn it into a boiling pot of water and it will fit, I think, 4 pint jars in there.
But, at that, if that's all you're doing, that it's probably better, probably just as easy to use a big metal pot and boil your water.
Yeah. It's a matter of what your resources are. Sometimes I don't like to heat up the kitchen, and the Instant Pot is nice for that, especially if you're like canning a little something in July. And I don't want a steam bath in my kitchen. I use the Instant Pot instead.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nice.
And then
you got all kinds of supplies there.
Some jars. If there's a jar, I probably have it. So I just brought a little selection out here. They have all different sizes, from these little tiny 1/4 pints, which is about a half cup. That's what I canned my bean salad in. And this is actually a candle jar from Dollar Tree.
Oh,
so
wow.
for $1.25, I got this super cute little mason jar. Totally fine for canning in. It's a mason jar. It's just little. You've got different shapes too. So this one's kind of a squarish shape. Squat jar. That's a half pint. This is a 1 pint or a 2-cup jar. This is pretty standard. To this point, I've showed you only jars that have a narrow mouth or a regular mouth. Narrow and regular are the same in canning terminology. These jars tend to dip in a little bit, and then the neck of the jar goes up from there. So they've got that little shoulder on them. A wide mouth jar is just as it sounds, a wide mouth. So this is a straight edged jar. Really nice for canning like chunks of meat or something that's a little bit harder to get out in a wide mouth jar. However, wide mouth jars are more expensive and their lids are more expensive substantially. Both are more costly than a regular mouth jar. This is quart size, both regular mouth and wide mouth. This is kind of a novel shape, which is a straight-sided 1.5-pint jar. So that holds about 3 cups. And this is really great for things like pineapple spears or asparagus, things that are kind of a little longer.
Yeah.
There are some decorative jars that are okay for canning, and there are some decorative jars that are not okay for canning. So if you're using cutesy stuff, I would just check and make sure that you can actually safely can in it. Some of the vintage jars are not recommended to can in because they contain substances that have since been found to not be awesome to have in your food, like lead.
Yeah.
Um, so vintage jars are best for like dry storage. This is a very big half-gallon jar. All half-gallon jars have a wide mouth on them. You can only can juice in these, or according to the USDA, that's the only thing they recommend canning in a half-gallon jar. So I
Why is
mostly
that?
use these. The size of it, it's hard to get the internal temperature
Okay.
up in the middle of this big vessel. However, I would wager a bet that it's probably because it hasn't actually been tested.
Okay.
Most people aren't going to need a half gallon of food at a time. So I don't think a lot has been invested in terms of research for that.
Mm. Now, when you say juice, is that so? Like, I have a squeezer. Sometimes when the grandkids come over, I'll let them play around and squeeze some fresh oranges to make juice. So, is that something you would can in that?
Yeah, you can can orange juice.
Yeah.
Pretty much any fruit juice. You're going to lose some quality and flavor when you do that because you're cooking it. So just imagine cooked orange juice and what that flavor profile would be. So I don't know. I haven't done orange juice, so I can't say. Things like apple juice work great. Grape juice, they basically come out tasting just like a frozen concentrate would. I think that those frozen concentrates are probably cooked, so they taste like normal pasteurized juice.
Great.
I just don't know about orange juice. I really have no idea.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what are your go-to resources? Where do you find all your information?
Let me go get the books. So I mentioned the ball canning books, and that's basically what I use. Lots of tried and true recipes. So we've got the complete book of home preservation, pretty little thing with all those jars on the front. These have some color illustrations, but it's mostly pretty straightforward, just recipes. So that's going to tell you what the process needs to be. The complete book of home preservation includes not just canning. It talks about dehydration. It talks about freezing. So really all different types of food preservation methods can be found in here. And it's quite the encyclopedia of recipes. Like you sit down and browse this and you want to can everything. The recipes are pretty fun. A smaller version is this Ball Blue Book guide to preserving. And this also has great recipes, different recipes than in that big complete book of home preservation. And it's a little bit thinner, a little bit cheaper, but neither of these are too costly. $10 or $15 you can get them for. And they're nice to have a physical resource, although you certainly can go online to the Ball website, to Kerr is another brand that always follows USDA guidelines, KERR. You'll see those Kerr jars. So you can get recipes there. Pretty much any university extension that, so like UMaine.edu, their extension, cooperative extension may have recipes and canning guidelines. They're always going to be following the USDA guidelines as well. I would be careful with like Facebook groups and stuff like that if you don't know what you're doing, because you don't understand what risks you're undertaking if those are not, certified kind of recipes. I would stick with the basics until you know what you're doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Great.
I think what else? Oh, as far as purchasing supplies, Amazon is great for things like the canners. I would be careful buying jars and lids from Amazon because there have been a rash basically since the pandemic, a rash of very poor quality. So some of the lids that you can buy for a great price in bulk, you have a high fail rate with when you're buying them online. Some things are marketed as ball lids and they're not actually ball lids. And if you don't know the difference, then you don't know the difference. But you go to open your canner and all of your food is floating inside, and that's a real bummer. So, or it just doesn't seal So the jar may break because it's cheap quality glass, or the lid may not seal, and then you process your food for nothing. So I would stick with major name brands. So Ball, Kerr, Bernardin is one that you'll see here sometimes. That's a Canadian brand, but sometimes you'll see them here. I've had really great luck with the Walmart brand Mainstays jars and lids. They're some of my favorites, actually. Those and Golden Harvest. They're some of the cheapest jars, but they're very good quality. They're heavy. And the lids are nice and thick. Anchor Hawking is also a very good jar brand. So I would get those locally. You can look at them, kind of get an idea of the quality. Pretty much anything you can buy at Walmart is going to be a fine quality. And that's the cheapest place to buy them too. Other than those junky online sales.
Yeah, right. So you have a couple of in-person workshops coming up, right?
Yeah, I love that hands-on piece. A lot of people are scared of canning for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's just the unknown. It's so kind of unfamiliar and foreign to them. Sometimes it's because they're afraid of, not doing it right and making their family sick or something like that. The incidence of foodborne illness from home canned food is vanishingly low. There aren't even any cases of it in the most recent published data for home canning. So it's safe when you follow the guidelines, but people still feel better with those hands-on classes. So I am offering a workshop at the end of March for high acid food. I think we're going to do jam. I'm not 100% sure because, like I said, jam's not my favorite. So I may switch that to pickles or something, but we'll do a high acid canning. That's kind of the entry level. And then at the end of April, I'll do a pressure canning workshop.
Nice. That's awesome. And how can they follow you to make sure that they get in on the workshops when you post them?
Yeah, so my workshops tend to sell out pretty quickly. So I do recommend following along if you're interested. If you want to email, you can, and I can put you on my wait list for canning workshops. That is learn@downtownhomesteader.com. You can go to the website and find the posts, the events, basically, where you can sign up for your ticket. But if you're not in the Facebook group or on our email list, you might not know that there's a class until it's filled. So I would recommend following us on Facebook at Downtown Homesteader, or get on our email newsletter. Again, you can just message me at learn@downtownhomesteader.com and I'll get you on the email list if you'd like. You can also go to our website, downtownhomesteader.com, and there's a bullet right at the top of the page where you can click to sign up for the newsletter there. So however you'd like to do it, we are here to receive you, and I hope to see some of you there.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people that watch some of my my social media are from far away. Do you ever do anything that is on Zoom or workshops like that?
I haven't, but we have ideas of expanding into different realms. Right now, we're really focused on that community building and hands-on skills that you can't get somewhere else. But hey, never say never. I may expand my enterprise. We'll see.
That's right. So get on the email list just in case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing this, because this was so helpful. And like you said, even if it helps just a few, that's awesome. And get on the email list, because like she said, she wasn't kidding when she said that her workshops go fast, because they do.
24 to 48 hours usually. So I don't know if the canning ones will go that quick, but all the other ones have.
Yeah, no, I'm sure
there's a hunger out there for getting together and doing fun stuff and learning things. So
especially things like this that are going to help you to be more resourceful and independent. And so it's all good stuff. So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you doing this, and I can't wait. I will be at both workshops, I'm sure.
I'm so excited. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was fun for me. I've never been interviewed before, so this is a good time and not as scary as I thought it would be.
There you go. Thank you.